Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Dr. Thomas Schwartz from Vanderbilt University, history and political science professor. Dr. Schwartz, going back now to talk about North Korea, Secretary of State Pompeo was in North Korea talking again about progress, but we've been so back and forth, not only during this administration, but other administrations. Don't you always have to take the idea that there's been progress with a big grain of salt? We certainly do. What does seem a little bit different this time, and I think is certainly the case, is the attitude of the South Korean government, which is very positive toward what's happening in North Korea and has really taken the lead on this in the sense of encouraging the Secretary of State Pompeo to come back to North Korea. And I do think in that sense there does seem to be some movement. I mean, even the discussion about Kim Jong-un inviting the Pope to visit. I mean, this is pretty extraordinary stuff to hear. And so it does seem like something's happening, but as you rightly commented, the specifics have not got to be nailed down. Another summit is potentially in the works? Yes. Is he coming to Washington? No, I think they'll still go to probably a third-party place somewhere. I don't think the Washington. They were joking this week that he'd come to Mar-a-Lago, and Trump said something like, "Well, yeah, he probably would love that," but I don't think we're quite there yet. But I would think not another Singapore, but maybe another neutral site. It would be too much to bring him. He's considered to be quite a brutal dictator. Right. To bring him to Washington might give him even more status than some Republican supporters of the president would want to take. Yeah. Last year we talked about being on the brink of war with North Korea. Now President Trump has said during one of his rallies that he and Kim Jong-un are in love. Yeah. Explain that diplomatically. What does in love mean? Well, it's hard to know with Donald Trump, but I mean, basically it seems like they have formed a mutual admiration society, and that they get along, and that I think the president feels like he can use this as a tool against those who criticized him as having a hair trigger temper and wanting to get the United States into war. And in this sense, Trump is trying to use, or in some ways exaggerating, relations with North Korea. What's problematic, and certainly as you could see in Lindsey Graham's reaction to this, is that for many Republicans, North Korea was always a pariah state, and Democrats. I mean, it's a horrifically repressive state. So it's hard to look at Trump's relationship with Kim Jong-un in any sort of positive sense. The president talks about these beautiful letters that he gets from Kim Jong-un. It may be until we get, after he's out of office and his archives and his letters are released, what these letters say, but you have any idea of what they would say, that the president would say they're beautiful, or is this just another Trump exaggeration? Well, from my own sense of what people write in diplomatic letters, there is a certain amount of flowery language and sort of discussions of the future and all of this sort of stuff, which can avoid messy details like actually dismantling nuclear sites or freeing political prisoners. But I could imagine that some of that language is used by Kim to try and soften up Trump, and probably a great deal of praise for Trump's steps, which Trump would, of course, greet very enthusiastically. Let's talk about a different subject. Let's go to the disappearance, and it appears to be the murder of the Washington Post columnist and Saudi Arabia critic Jamal Khashoggi. I suppose we all now expect that he has been murdered, and he may have been murdered by the Saudis in their embassy in Turkey. This has some ominous overtones to it, not just in terms of Mideast politics, but in terms of politics here in this country. Absolutely. The United States, under the Trump administration, has put a lot of its stakes in the Middle East on Saudi Arabia and on Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi prince. He got incredible good publicity when he came to the United States earlier this year. 60 Minutes ran a very favorable piece on him. His efforts to reform Saudi Arabia, to allow women to drive, to ease up on the religious police, these sorts of things have given him, at least in part, a favorable image. What's happened since, of course, is the war that Saudi Arabia is waging in Yemen is now seen as a terrible humanitarian catastrophe, and now you've got this killing of a dissident, perhaps. And this is, I think, going to have a very, very sobering effect on what it has meant for us to put so much faith in the Saudis. Internationally, I think there was a conference coming up that many countries are now canceling going to, that I think the Saudi Arabians were involved in. Here in this country, Bob Corker, who's the outgoing Tennessee senator and still the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, along with a number of other senators, have invoked a U.S. law that basically demands an investigation and potential sanctions for whoever's involved with this.
Absolutely.
That puts the president in a tough spot.
It does. It does. It puts the president, and particularly also it puts his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who has also banked on the Saudis being the key supporters of a Middle East peace plan. So I think it will put the president in a tough bind. You might actually compare it a little bit to the Russia sanctions, in the sense that what the president has been trying to do in terms of easing Saudi Arabia could be reversed by Congress and sanctions against the Saudis.
The president has finally said he has some concerns about this for a while. When this first came up, he was a little bit quiet about it. Is this something they're going to have to finesse, perhaps have someone else in the administration be their point person on it? Because the president does not appear to be ready to do that, at least at this point.
It may well be. It may fall to Secretary of State Pompeo or someone else. I would have thought, actually earlier on, if she was still in the administration, then Nikki Haley might have taken up this cause, because this is closer to her set of interests. But I think in this case, I think they may need a different spokesperson.
As we wrap up, Bob Corker, as we mentioned, is leaving the Senate. He will not be the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Who takes his place, and what's that person's likely relationship with the administration?
That's
Corker
a good question.
Sometimes was rocky.
Yes. If the Democrats took it, it would be the senator from New Jersey, Menendez, who would take the place. But I'm trying to think now who would be the Republican in second in seniority, and I'm not sure. This is I apologize for this, but I don't actually know who would be in successive grounds, and part of that is, of course, again, who is in control of the Senate.
Dr. Schwartz, thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure we'll have you back again to talk about these matters, both electorally and in foreign affairs.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics this week. Hope you'll be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the NewsChannel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. The new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.